This episode of the HooperCast is brought to you by Letterboxd. Right now, listeners of our show have the chance to win a free 1-year pro account upgrade on Letterboxd. For those of you who don't know, Letterboxd is a social network for film lovers that allows you to track, rate, and review the films you watch. You can follow other members to get recommendations. You can publish lists of films like your top 10 for the year, and a lot more. Letterboxd is free to use. There's no subscription fee, but a pro account is going to provide you with additional features such as a customized summary of your past year's viewing. If you already have an account, then you get a 1-year extension free. So even if you're already paying for the pro account, you're thinking, oh yeah, I don't need this. I've already got it. Thanks a lot, HooperCast, for, I already re-upped my subscription. You get a year free on us. So you're included as well. If you want to enter, all you have to do is listen to our show and we will read the code word at random. Then you're going to send us an email at hoopercast@gmail.com, enter the code word in the subject line of the email, and make sure you include your Letterboxd username in the email so that we know which account to reward. If you send us the code word, but I don't know your login, we're going to move on to the next person. So make sure you send us the code word and your account username, and then you're in like Flint, my friend. The winner will be selected during the last show of each month. You can also follow our show on Letterboxd. Just search HooperCast. That's letterboxd.com, letterboxd.com, letterboxd.com. Damn right, everybody. It's the HooperCast. I'm doing really super quiet tonight because I'm just recording this little intro before I go to bed. But the point is, it's the HooperCast abridged. We, or when I say we, I mean I, mixed up the dates for the episodes. We found ourselves one episode ahead. So Dustin and I are stitching together an episode for you tonight. A few reviews we were going to do anyways, but we're going to do them in pieces now because that's the way things work. So, real quick, if you like this partial episode, you can actually get the full episode of this on Patreon, patreon.com/HooperCast, $1 for the full episode, or you can just listen a week later. Well, I guess if you're watching YouTube now, then you can listen to the full episode on audio right now on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Breaker, Google Podcasts, and Anchor FM, or any of those, or all of them, every single one of them over and over again until you die. That's fine too. It's a free country. Anyway, stay tuned for later in the episode for more details on the code word for the Letterboxd promotion. But without further ado, here is Dustin here to tell you about 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Hey everybody, Dustin here. I just wanted to give you guys a quick review for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. This film came out in 2017. It was nominated for 2 Oscars and was written and directed by Martin McDonagh, who you may know as the writer and director of 7 Psychopaths and In Bruges. The film stars Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, and a whole host of other people that you will undoubtedly recognize. The film is really well performed, and I think that's to be expected with the Oscar clout behind it. I believe Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell both won Oscars for their performances here, and they both do give great performances. So what's the movie about? Very briefly, the film begins with Frances McDormand's character driving past 3 abandoned billboards on her way home, and she has this little idea. You see, a few weeks prior, her daughter was raped and murdered, and the case has kind of gone cold. It's not that the authorities have forgotten or the case is closed, but rather the leads have just kind of dried up, so there hasn't been much movement. So She, of course, is still distraught by the death of her daughter, so she rents out these 3 billboards and calls out the police chief. Says something to the effect of, why still no arrests, stuff like that. Anyway, the point is, she rents this out in this small town. Word gets around, and very quickly people start to turn against her. It's a town where the police chief is well loved and well respected. So, of course, her calling out the police chief in a small town makes the whole town kind of turn on her. Not only that, but she has an ex-husband who has married a younger woman. And so, you've got that drama. You also have drama with her son, who in his own way is grieving the death of his sister. And you have the relationship between the Woody Harrelson character and the Sam Rockwell character. Woody is the police chief and sort of the mentor figure for Sam Rockwell, who is a racist and openly tortures and beats African American people in the community. He often arrests them and pulls them over for no apparent reason other than the fact that they're black. So he's a very racist and flawed individual, to say the least. And the movie does something really interesting with him, which I won't spoil here, but it does sort of ask us if somebody like that is capable of garnering our sympathy. Likewise, it asks if somebody like Frances McDormand, who should have nothing but our sympathy, can go too far. It also asks if the police chief, who should have our sympathy, he, in fact, in one of his earliest scenes, he's seen in conversation with Frances McDormand and trying to explain to her very briefly and compassionately that the case has gone cold. And it's not that he doesn't care, it's just simply that there's nothing more he can do. And so we should be sympathetic to him, and yet we begin to unravel the layers of this human and find that maybe there was more gray area there than we thought. And in fact, I think that's the case with all of these characters. We are introduced to heroes and villains, and then the line blurs. So we, the audience, are asked to sympathize with people we shouldn't, and asked to condemn people that we should be sympathetic towards. So it's a really weird way that the filmmaker Martin McDonagh is able to present the gray area here. And maybe that's the best thing I can say about it, is that the film does that better than pretty much any movie in recent memory. There are a lot of movies that trade in this gray mentality. Now, me personally, I don't tend to relate to those movies as well. I like when the screenwriter has a stance on a character and asks the audience to take a stance on a character rather than allow us to kind of flip-flop back and forth throughout the film and say he's good, he's bad, he's good, he's bad. And yet this works. This really does drive the point home that there's good and there's bad in every single person, and good people are capable of bad things, and bad people are capable of good things sometimes. So we're introduced to all of these gray characters, and so the best thing I can say about the film is that it does that better than any movie in recent memory. The film's a little slow. I could see how some people might be a little bored by it, especially towards the beginning. But I was riveted. I thought it was a really great way of sort of slowly building to something fantastic, and it, in a way, reminded me of a Western, or I don't know, maybe a Coen Brothers movie. But the point is, it felt like. It felt a little bit like you spend all of this time setting up and getting to know the characters so that by the time the climax comes around, you're well prepared. And so it kind of can feel like nothing happens until the climax. But there are there are enough set pieces here, enough memorable moments and driving moments throughout the story to keep you engaged and keep you entertained, even if you're one of those people that has a little bit of a harder time with slower films. But the film is very dialogue heavy. It's very it is very much about characters having conversations and characters getting to know one another and arguing with one another. So it's a very welcome change. I know on this podcast we tend to review movies that are a little more like blockbuster films, superhero movies and action movies and that kind of thing. And that's something that Hooper and I are both very passionate about. And yet it's always good to have a nice change of pace and have something like this that is a quiet, slow, contemplative film. And so I really, really enjoyed this film. It's it's 2 hours long, but it doesn't feel that way. It really does feel like it pushes forward. I do think that maybe, like I said, some people might have trouble latching on at the beginning. It's a little bit slow, a little bit plodding, but really by the end of the first act, you're moving along. At least I was. So I enjoyed the length of the film. I didn't think it was too long. I didn't think it was too short. And I enjoyed everything, with the small town. A lot of times small towns come off as Norman Rockwell-esque or really quaint or just a little kitschy, but instead this felt like a real town. It felt like it didn't have like, here's the barber shop and here's the whatever. It was just kind of like any normal real small town. Again, it's just one of those films that's well made throughout. It does not overstay its welcome, and it gives you something that you didn't really even know you wanted, which is good, slow character development. I went in thinking, okay, this is going to be like a murder mystery. Who did it? We're going to, chase the clues and find the bad guy. And really, it's more about just getting to know the characters. And getting to know Frances McDormand and what is she thinking? What is she feeling? They make use of flashbacks even to give you insight into her psychology. So it's a really great movie. I was able to get this actually at the library. You can find it at Redbox. It is not streaming anywhere at the moment, but it is worth your time. So if you're able to stop by Redbox and pick it up, or even go to your local library and get it there, I highly recommend it. I would give it 4 stars. It's not excellent simply because it's maybe not a fun watch. So it's not something that I'm going to buy and watch over and over and over, but it is certainly worth your time. It is a smart movie. It's a well-made movie. There's really not much I can nitpick about unless we're talking about the ending, which you're either going to love or you're going to hate. I hope you love it. I thought it was pretty cool the way that it ended, but I often think about various members of like my family who might see this film and hate the ending, or friends of mine who really would say the ending ruined it. But for me, I thought it was a cool way to end it, and I think it leaves a lot for you to think about and chew on over the end credits and for the hours and days to come. So yeah, I highly recommend 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. It is a like I said, it's just a well-made movie. You're not gonna split your side laughing, and you're really probably not gonna smile through it very much, but you're going to walk out having seen a good, well-told story. And for a movie like this, that's just, that's your meat and potatoes. That's what you want. That's what nourishes you. That's what fills you up, and it tastes really good. So yeah, I'm going to toss it back over to Hooper, and you guys enjoy your week and get out to the movies. Yeah. Bye.
Okay, well, thank you, Dustin. I'm going to take it from here. Hello, everybody, and continue on the HooperCast here with a little review from me. Of course, going Going to remind you that if you are watching us right now on YouTube, this is a partial episode. It'll end for you in a little bit here, but there is a way to get the full episode, of course, by going to patreon.com/HooperCast, or you can find this full audio. If you're watching on YouTube, then this full audio is available for you right now on iTunes, Stitcher. Oh, good bit amount of what you call them, platforms. As a matter of fact, those platforms would be iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Breaker, Anchor FM, and of course now Google Podcasts. All available there for if you just search HooperCast, and then they'll show up or something like that. That's how it works, right? Of course, if you want to just stay with Patreon, that's cool too. We always encourage that. Let's get into a review for me. Kind of probably on the late side here. Some of you might still not have checked it out, but I saw it, and this is our show, and we talk about what we want to talk about. I recently saw It, the Stephen King remake film, starring a good many people that you might not recognize. Particularly this gentleman, Bill Skarsgård, as Pennywise the clown, Pennywise the dancing clown, as he says. This actress, who is particularly good in the film, who plays Beverly, and then a bunch of kids, chief among them being the kid from Stranger Things. One of the kids from Stranger Things. He's coming up. You'll see him in these gigantic glasses. Yeah, it's him right there in the glasses. He looks like a real dweeb in there. And that's the point. These kids are all good friends. I think the year is 1983 or something, maybe. Don't quote me on that. I don't have the info in front of me because I'm trying not to use my internet right now. But yeah, that is the group of kids. That's our group of misfits here, the Losers Club. But they are terrorized by these nightmares once the guy in the plaid right there, his kid brother Georgie goes missing, and of course, if you see the beginning of the film, we the audience know that Georgie is dead, or presumably dead, because he is pulled into the sewer by Pennywise the dancing clown, and a year later no one's found him. There's a bunch of other kids that have gone missing. And it's real creepy stuff. And all these kids, in some form or another, are starting to see more of their deepest fears in kind of these nightmarish scenarios. And they learn that these fears are all manifested by Pennywise the dancing clown, who is a thousands of year old demon who eats children. And he takes the form of their greatest fears. To scare the shit out of them. And that's the plot of this film. This is, of course, a remake. There was a real campy, not that scary looking, I haven't seen it, scary looking version of this Stephen King novel. A lot of people have read the novel. They've told me it's really great. So I trust those people. I want to read it someday. I'm trying to read some more. That's just not one of those things that happens for me these days quite so easily. This film is a 3-star for me. I did not see this in theaters. I saw this in a Redbox, and so I didn't pay that much for it. I definitely think it's worth a Redbox rental. Of course, that's the only way you can see it now, obviously, or you could purchase it. But it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. I give it 3 stars. Now, this is kind of where it's like, okay, so is that recommendation for horror fans or non-horror fans? Look, I treat all viewers like they're me, because that's the only perspective I can give you is my perspective. See, an image like that is terrifying of this clown. Pennywise is scary. Pennywise is scary, but there are too many jump scares in this movie. I was a little disappointed because it does really well with implied... it does very well with implying it's violence. It's scares, but it sort of cashes in and does a bunch of jump scares. And while those can get people to jump and it makes the film seem like it's scary, my bar for a horror film is higher than that. I can make my son jump scared me earlier today. Okay, he just came up behind me when I wasn't expecting, and he tapped me and he said boo. I did that to him the other day. I'm not a scare master. I jump scared him. I messed with his reflexes. That's what a jump scare is. And it's cheap. Anybody can do a jump scare. It's easy with a sharp music note or a sudden jump cut or just a quick camera movement, and then boom, there's a person there. But if you do like a slow camera movement back to like the picture you saw there a second ago, and there's something behind the character that wasn't there before, well, that's scary because you, as the audience, know, like, oh, something's out of place. There's not supposed to be anybody else in here. That's creepy. The film sort of doesn't reach as high as I think it was capable of. Everything's here. Pennywise is here. And there are some parts of the movie where it's very much implied and well-built tension. And they sort of do these jump scares, and it's just it's disappointing. I don't want to harp too much on that, but it's just like, come on, man. You know, you've got real good slow builds in here for sure. The kids were fine. They weren't mind blowing. Some of them were kind of like, what's his face? With the glasses from Stranger Things. He was kind of annoying. I was kind of sick of him. Everyone else was pretty good, especially, Bill. I think his name is Bill. He's the older brother whose brother Georgie was killed. That kid was good. You know, a number of these kids have an arc. They obviously all have some kind of arc. I'm most impressed by the actress who plays Bev. She's really good. Her character goes through a lot, and she's easily the most complex of all these kids. And I particularly was impressed with her performance. But too many jump scares for me, not because I'm a wuss, because I expect more from my movies, and that's just the way things are. The next film I saw was what's it called? Whiplash. Just let me give me a second and I can get the pictures up here for you. Whiplash is a 2014 film, and it was directed by Damien Chazelle, who the name maybe you recognize from La La Land. Before that, he did Whiplash, and it is a film about a drummer. I think he's a student in Juilliard. I'm sorry, guys. I don't do plot. I don't pull up the plot in front of me and read it. I just do this from memory. I believe he's a student at Juilliard, and he's trying to be a jazz drummer. He practices really hard. He practices late at night. He spends all his time drumming. He's dedicated to drumming. They go into some stuff later in the film about why he has to prove that to his dad, because his brothers get all this glory for doing this sort of basic, or not basic, but generic, like, you know, scholar athlete stuff. And they're not even excelling that good at it. Meanwhile, he's bleeding all over this drum set, busting his ass, trying to become the best drummer that he can be, which is an admirable quality. So in the beginning, mark my words, in the beginning, you like this kid. Then he meets J.K. Simmons, okay, who is a mean son of a bitch, who is an instructor there, and he sort of drafts Miles Teller into like his intermediate or his advanced class or whatever. And it is a school of hard knocks. They will practice for hours until one of the rotating sets of drummers can maintain the pace. He throws chairs at people. He verbally abuses people. He's very, very, he's abusive to these kids. No question. Nothing is off limits for this guy, but he brings out the best in them. And that's kind of what the movie's all about. It's almost about like, well, what's the line? Is it okay to act like an abusive asshole if you're drawing the best performance out of somebody? If that's the way you get the best out of them, then is the good performance the net positive? That's sort of the moral quandary that the film poses. This is a really well executed film. Okay, this is a 3.5 stars. Okay, 3.5 stars out of 5. It is a well executed film, extremely well. The editing is completely on point. The score, everything. It's a very musically driven film, so of course the editing is really driven by match cuts on sound cues, and that's certainly something that's awesome to see. Okay, I can appreciate that as someone who can. I can appreciate rhythm, and I can appreciate when a film's director pays attention to that too. The problem is I hate this main character. Okay, he does not change. That's another thing I hate. I hate him. So in the beginning, I told you, right? I like this kid, okay? I like how hard he works. I like how dedicated he is. I appreciate that he has a goal. He wants to be the best. and he's sort of like surprised and humbled and kind of like, oh, when he's bumped ahead of the more experienced dude to get on the drums because he's better than him. But after a while, whether it's due to the influence of J.K. Simmons, he gets kind of cocky, and it's fine because it's like, okay, because he's punished for being cocky eventually, right? But the film ends and he's changed, all right, but all he's done is become a bigger asshole. He's a bit like this final number here he does. When it finishes, I thought, okay, that was really good. But it's also like, man, you became the best, but it sort of cost you your decency as a person, in my opinion. That's what I took away from it. So I hate that. And it makes me not want to watch the movie again. The points are for J.K. Simmons and the direction of Damien Chazelle in this film. Okay, J.K. Simmons is phenomenal in this film. I think he got nominated for an Oscar. He might have even won for supporting actor. He's great in this film. So this film is definitely worth seeing for the pacing, the direction, and the performance of J.K. Simmons. But if you want to see a character that you like at the end of this film, you're not going to see one because he ain't there. Okay, it just the way it is. Yeah. So that's Whiplash. Great film. But I have no desire to see it again because that dude right there, just angers me on a personal level. I don't have any pictures for this next film, so I'm just going to kind of go off my notes here. But I did see a documentary on Netflix called The Truth About Alcohol. This is a documentary on Netflix. I think it might have been some sort of British TV special. It's one of those. It's 58 minutes. It's not a very long film. It's called The Truth About Alcohol, and I don't remember the filmmakers. Once again, I'm doing this off the cuff, so you're just gonna have to forgive me. But the filmmaker is going through the documentary, basically challenging and sort of investigating and myth busting all the myths around alcohol consumption. Okay, so if you have ever been curious about that, this is kind of a cool film to watch, to kind of explore that subject. I recommend it if you know nothing about alcohol and you're too lazy to read words. Okay, because I've wondered one here and there, like, oh, can alcohol does alcohol make you sleep worse? How does it affect this person? Just a bunch of little like tests, like, oh, what's the best way to get over a hangover? Just some alcohol stuff. But if you've ever wondered those things, chances are you've Googled it like me. But if you're too lazy to actually go into articles and look at the WikiHow of how alcohol affects the brain, or how alcohol affects your circadian rhythm, or how alcohol affects your motor skills, how alcohol affects you on an empty stomach versus a full stomach, or beer versus wine, or wine versus whiskey. If you're too lazy to read that, then fine, get on your Netflix account, go check out The Truth About Alcohol. But it's just a lot of shit that I already knew, but it was presented pretty well. So you probably already know most of this information, but it's shot nicely. It's real polished. The guy is British. British accents are lovely. Everyone he speaks to in the film is British. So it's quaint in that sense to just everyone's, oh yeah, we got the whiskey, haven't we? It's I can't complain about that. The best thing about it though is indeed the short run time, because this film could not carry a 90-minute or a 2-hour runtime. It's just a real short documentary. So I still give it 3 stars because, again, like I said, it's competently shot. The images are nice, HD. It's good shots in it, I guess. I don't know. That's not a pun. Trust me. Okay, so now we're going to say goodbye to the YouTube people. If you want to see the rest of this video podcast or video show, whatever, you can go to patreon.com/HooperCast, okay? All it's going to cost you is $1 to see the rest of this video show. You can get the full audio, of course, right now on iTunes, Stitcher, all of those podcast distribution platforms, but there's something more to video. And I hope maybe you realize that after watching this video up to now, it's just better to see a person and listen instead of just listening. Just listening's fine. I love it. And if you like to just listen, you can go just listen to the show. I love that as well. But if you appreciate the work that goes into making these videos, go over, become a patron for $1 a video. You don't even have to pay for everyone. Just pay for the ones that where we're talking about something you're interested in hearing about. You can also donate just $1 a month to the page. Just support us in a general sense. That's really great. We're going to start doing some audio commentary soon over there. That's going to be a lot of fun. But there certainly is nothing wrong with consuming the show in all of its free formats. I'm not going to be mad at you. I certainly understand. So farewell to the YouTube people, and stay tuned for just a second, the Patreon folks. All right, the final film of this episode that I'm going to review is, I did a review of a film I've already seen. That's what a review would be. I wanted to give a fair shot to a film I used to own and I sold because then I didn't like it. And I rewatched it recently just because I could have a more mature take on it. And that film is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is from 2011. This is directed by David Fincher. It stars Daniel Craig, Rooney Mara, Stellan Skarsgård, Christopher Plummer, a number of other folks, Robin Wright. And I rented this at the library. I don't think you could find this at Redbox or anything, so you can either go on iTunes and rent this, or it's probably at your local library. It's recent enough to where it should be at your local library, unless your library sucks. So this is a film based on the book from Stieg Larsson, really popular book series. This was pretty well anticipated when it came out in 2011. David Fincher is a really prolific and competent, very talented director, and these are great stars. And this was going to be a great trilogy of these films, because they had previously been made into movies over starring Noomi Rapace. There's the Swedish versions. So this was going to be the American, version, although they still play Swedish characters, obviously true to the source material, but they were going to be acted by, actors that Hollywood, it's going to be produced by Hollywood. So, of course, it wasn't just a cash grab because you got all these great people involved. So, but for some reason, the franchise didn't get beyond this film. I'm not sure if that was a box office thing. That's kind of where Dustin's absence right now is felt in this episode, because Dustin would be able to tell me right now what happened. So I'm assuming it was box office related. But this is a 3.5 for me. This is still really nicely shot and really well acted and directed. There's really real tension and all the the sexual assault situations with Rooney Mara's character Lisbeth Salander. I'm so sorry. The plot of this film is that guy right there, Mikael Blomkvist, played by Daniel Craig, is a journalist for a magazine in Stockholm that he co-owns, and he just lost a big libel suit against a real rich guy, and he's got to pay him a bunch of money, and he's kind of, it's obviously a black mark for a journalist if you lose a libel suit. You write something that's shown to not be true, or to not be really that well researched, and you sort of get nailed for it, then of course, it's going to have a hard time getting people to read your articles. So that's what happens to him at the beginning of the movie. And he gets grabbed pretty early on by Christopher Plummer to work, who's a fan of his work regardless of the libel, and he also knows that he's in a vulnerable state as a disgraced journalist. He needs the work, he needs the money, he's not got that much else going on, and he enlists him to help investigate the disappearance of his daughter from about a long time ago. I think it's like 40 years maybe that she's been missing. So he wants him to investigate it, just get him some answers, because he's been unable to find any. So that's kind of where the film sort of starts off. Eventually, you've also got this other character, Lisbeth Salander, who's this hacker. She's a ward of the state, probably a little mentally unstable, who's got her own storyline of trying to gain independence from her guardian, who's this abusive. Her main guardian's not abusive. He's a good guy, but they kind of move her to another dude who starts to sexually abuse her. And I think it's suggested that it's happened before with her. And so a lot of the film, that guy right there, a good bit of the film starting out for her is getting out from under his thumb. So again, like I said, nicely shot, well acted, and really well directed, but it's pretty damn slow. That's its big thing, is it's boring. A film that's well shot isn't typically that boring, but there's a whole lot of silent moments or quiet dialogue-free scenes in this movie because it's people investigating stuff. So there's not a lot of talking, and that's good if a filmmaker can show you all this information without having to have people spitting exposition at each other. I'd much prefer this film to other ones where they'll just talk information at each other that two characters wouldn't actually say in a real conversation. I certainly prefer the nonverbal storytelling. Do not get me wrong. It's just not very well paced, I guess. It's just, you got to give me something to pay attention, because it's, after a while, it's real easy just to drift off to sleep, at least for me. Now, it's really slow until Mikhail meets Lisbeth, and they kind of team up. And then their relationship becomes this really awesome team up that I really enjoyed seeing. But that takes like an hour to get to that point. And so I would have liked for this franchise to continue, because obviously going forward in future movies, I haven't read the books, but I presume they continue working together or they team up again. So it'd be really satisfying to see that their relationship continue to develop, especially how it ends at the end of this film. So it really sucks that it fell apart, because I would have liked to have seen more. But I think they just announced some other like unofficial sequel to this that's being made. It's completely being taken out of the hands of Fincher and Rooney Mara and Daniel Craig. And that's a shame, because it's always a shame when they have to reboot a franchise and when they do it so soon after a not bad attempt at it. It's always like, it sucks. It's wasted potential. So I wish it had continued, but we don't all get what we want, I suppose. That's going to do it. I think that's where we're going to leave this episode. That's just the kind of week it is. Oh, if you didn't, the code word for Letterboxd is still, what is it? Jitterbug. So this is the last time you can email us that code word for the Letterboxd extension, and we're going to have a new code word next month. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Everybody who's listening, tune in next week. We'll be back together, me and Dustin. I can't remember what we're talking about, but it's going to be cool, whatever it is. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week. Get out there, go see some good movies, and we will see you next week.